Welcome to the 2024-2025 NHL season tier list. Today we're ranking every single team from cup winner to first overall pick favorites, and there's no better time of the year to do this than right now. We're feeling pretty good about our predictions, and we were last year, but we have to start with things we got wrong last year. Canucks fans, you can come after us immediately because we said...
They always do.
They always do.
It doesn't matter what we say. They'll come after us regardless.
Very wrong about the teams.
Last year we said they were going to be in bad but not bad enough with teams like Chicago, the Ducks, Montreal. Not a lot of respect for them.
We're pretty right about the other teams, at least.
We were.
Yeah.
Got those right.
Oh, we're so smart.
We were also smart about first overall pick favorites.
Yeah.
We got the San Jose Sharks in there, but we also had the Flyers in there, so kind of half-half. And then I guess the other egregious ones, the New Jersey Devils, we had cream of the crop, and Sabres playoff likely. So those are the kind of expert picks you can expect from us and this esteemed colleague of hockey minds today. All right, we've changed up the categories in the tier list a little bit this year. So cup winner, again, for everyone watching at home and for us, we can only have one team in cup winner. We can only have one team in first overall pick favorites. We still have cream of the crop, or as you like to call it,
The creme de la crop.
creme de la crop.
Creme.
Creme de la,
Creme
yeah.
de la creme.
De la creme?
It took on a lot of variations last
Every
year.
time you have
A
to say
crop
it
de la
differently.
creme. Action.
It's different every time.
Yes.
The next category under that, playoffs, question mark, exclamation mark. It's kind of like teams that we expect to be in the playoffs, maybe fighting for a wild card spot. Under that, we have a new category called the void. You described it very well as like no man's land. Teams with no direction, maybe not excited about their futures. So that's kind of the descriptor for that. And then below that, maybe next year. Teams that maybe were a little more excited about their future, but don't really deserve to be in that category of like, what are they doing? So I don't think there's any better place to start it off than with our pal Jesse Pollock and the Washington Capitals.
That's how we're starting?
That's who we're starting off with. The Washington Capitals.
Oh my gosh.
Surprise playoff team last year because I think we all had them, if I'm not mistaken, in bad but not bad enough.
Look, Washington, obviously one of the worst playoff teams we've ever seen. They end up getting honestly, they end up getting swept. Like their goal differential was terrible last year.
Yeah.
And Washington's actually a better team than they were last year. But I would still say, just given how strong the East is, I don't know, like I feel like they're going to be competing for one of those wild card teams. So I feel like I have to respect them enough and say playoffs with question marks. I like what they did with Chychrun. I like what they did with Matt Roy. And up front, they also got Pierre-Luc Dubois, who I think he could have a bit of a resurgence in Washington. I wouldn't be surprised. The reason why I say playoffs is because I do think that they will be like in that 7 to 10 seed area in the East, and I feel like they still could be battling for a playoff spot.
I feel
It's
like
void or playoffs
Yeah,
for
like
sure.
I like the
Yes.
idea of them kind of being in that tweener range.
They'd be that's
it's
what I'm
almost
saying.
like I want to see who else is in the playoff category at the end and then reassess because they're they're that bubble team for me. Where also like look at Alex Ovechkin, the slow start that he had last year, and then the back half of the season he was back to just tearing it up and scoring so many goals. What Ovi are we going to see over 82 games this year? Is he going to, be back to his 40, 50 goal pace? That to me is a big X factor.
their back end is really solid. I feel like when we talked about when we did our free agency stream, like our biggest winners were Nashville and Washington because Washington really remade their team with like two solid defensive additions in their top four and then two solid forward acquisitions in their top six because they got Mangiapane as well. So,
as well.
like Poc said, maybe we leave them in there for now and
Reassess.
Yeah.
we'll reassess.
Hard
when we
not to
get
say
some more
playoffs
team.
when they made the playoffs last year and they did get a little bit better.
Yeah, let's move on to Poc, the Boston Bruins, a team that I think coming into last year, we may have we were early on their demise, or we wanted to see them maybe take a step back, and we thought they would with Patrice Bergeron gone and just a little uncertainty up front. What about this year?
I think, uncertainty is a great word to describe this team. And it's also not just last year where people seem to doubt these guys going into the season. It feels like every single season we say, this is the year Boston's going to step back because they never have any good prospects. They never have any really influx of youth entering their roster, and they manage to continue to churn out results.
They're like the anti-Sabres, where it's like every year we're saying Buffalo's going to make the playoffs, and every year the Bruins is like,
So
they're
true.
going to miss the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I think at this point, it's just, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I'm not going to doubt the Bruins again. I want to put them in creme de la creme and cream of the crop.
Ooh.
I just think that until proven otherwise, I would be foolish to sit up here and say that I expect Boston to take a step back. And I also love what they did in the offseason, getting Nikita Zadorov, getting Elias Lindholm from the Canucks. I think that helps them up, especially up front. And I look at their group of centermen now, and I actually don't think it's that bad. And that was the big piece of criticism on this team.
Let's move on to the Anaheim Ducks. Julia, where are we putting Anaheim?
Let's see in my little book. This is actually my journal. If you flip too deep, you'll see some positive affirmations.
I love that. Hey, everyone needs those positive affirmations sometimes. Maybe the Ducks need those positive affirmations as well.
They absolutely do. Let's see what happens with the Anaheim Ducks this year. The only thing they've really added offensively that should give them another 15-20 goals this year, because they could not score at all last year. They added Robbie Fabry, though. That should give them an extra 20 goals, but this team just needs to see internal growth from their main guys, and they need some better growth. They need some better luck with injuries this year too. Carlson was injured for a lot of last year. Obviously Zegras had a bad year. Killorn, I think spent a lot of last year injured, so they need some better luck. They've got a little bit of a different look behind the bench in coaching. They've got Cutter Gauthier coming in this year, so they literally, I think, got 1 point better last year than the year before, which the year before was their historically worst season ever. I think we can expect a little bit more of an improvement on that this year. If they can get 10 more points, I think it'll be a success.
Where are we putting them?
Maybe next year.
That category was made for teams like the
I
Ducks.
think so too.
There's so many
I don't
young
think we
players.
could say the void with all these young guys cooking.
No.
I think you need to see something, though, because it feels like it's been a while now where we've kind of been waiting for this. And we've been
Yeah.
praising this core of prospects. So I feel like this is definitely a big year for them to show some progression.
I actually think the Anaheim Ducks are the most exciting young team in the league right now. And I'm not saying that it's going to be this year, but I think that this team has such a bright future. Their prospect pool is incredible.
Yeah.
And
Their D, I didn't even mention, Zellweger and Luno might get some NHL games this year. The other guy.
Minchikov, who's unreal. In 3 years from now, I think the Ducks could very well be the best team in the NHL.
Wow.
Hot take.
Hot take.
Hot
A lot
take.
of development will need to happen for that. I'm up with the New Jersey Devils. Interesting team. I know we had really high expectations for them last year. New head coach and Sheldon Keefe, which is going to be an interesting dynamic.
Devils fans are loving it already. I see on the internet. They're super pleased with all his choices.
I'm kind of into Keefe as a coach.
So am I.
I think the biggest questions for this team undoubtedly are in net. They had 5 goalies last year play for them, and having consistency in net is going to be big. They've got Markstrom now, who I think has been better than people probably realize.
Yes. Top 10 goalie.
Yeah, Calgary, he had a tough year last year, but he still finished 9th in goals saved above expected last year for a Flames team that was obviously just miserable to kind of watch and would be tough for any goalie to kind of succeed there. So
that was a loud year for him too. It was the first time there was rumors around his name and stuff like that. For sure.
And between him and Jake Allen, I think the crease is going to be a lot better than it was last year and maybe more consistent. I like what they did on defense, but starting the year without Pesce and Luke Hughes, who are both hurt right now, might be a little tough. But when this team is at full strength, I want to say this is a cream of the crop team again, just because I think they've got so many talented forwards and so many young stars that have already kind of broken out. Luke Hughes' breakout last year was he looked like he belonged and was impacting games immediately. Dougie Hamilton's back healthy, which is big for that team.
Point
and then
per game guy last year.
Jack Hughes being healthy again too as well. NHL cover athlete. He was on a tear to start the season. So I think Sheldon Keefe has managed really good players. He did it in Toronto and they had a lot of success. I think this Devils team could maybe follow that mold and be in for a really good season. So I'm going to leave them there.
I think the teams that I have in mind for playoffs, they're better than.
They're kind of in that
But
mid-range.
I feel like if they're in
mid-range.
cream of the crop, will I be surprised if come middle of May there's a selfie of Sheldon Keefe at a cottage already because they're out of the playoffs? No. But I think they're a good team. I'm very excited about the Devils. Sorry, I didn't want that to be
That was
more of a Leaf
it.
fan jab than it was a Devils jab. Very, very excited for the Devils this season.
We got another good team to talk about here, and a team that everyone loves us when we talk about them. The Vancouver Canucks.
Oh, I don't even want to contribute.
Jesse, you're up with Vancouver.
I like the Canucks. And this depends on a lot of things. So much respect to them for what they did last year. I think the fact that Tocchet is kind of there's a new, you talk about culture in an organization. There's a new culture in Vancouver. I remember my uncle Sherry Basson used to say, you can't show up to a game wanting to win. You have to show up to a game expecting to win. And I feel like that's kind of just the new expectation in Vancouver. They're expecting to win every game, and they have the talent that they should be expecting to win every game that they step onto the ice. Massive question marks in net right now. We don't really know what's going on with Demko, and Shilovs was still good in the playoffs, but Demko was like a... I know there's been some controversy about him.
You can direct that controversy to me. I can take it. And I'm just going to go on the record. I think Demko's a good goalie, Canucks fans. Okay, chill. He's in the top 10.
Chill. I think obviously Vancouver did lose a couple key pieces though that they got for the playoffs. I think Lindholm is going to be a tough loss. Additionally, I really like the DeBrusk signing.
Yeah.
I really like Jake DeBrusk. I think he's a gritty player. And Jonathan Lekkerimäki. He cracked the lineup.
Electric World Juniors last year. He was one of the best players at that tournament.
Was very good. You guys might disagree with me until they prove me otherwise. Cream of the crop for the Canucks.
I agree.
I think they've got to be.
I feel like it would have been an overreaction because of who they lost in the offseason to bump them down. They were so good last year.
Yeah.
They belong there.
Took the Oilers to game 7.
Pedersen wasn't even like his best last year, especially towards the end of the season,
playoffs.
and he's only going to get better, which is crazy to think about because he had offensively had a very productive year. So, and I think that like he's going to be healthy now, and there's just a lot of really good pieces on the team. I just don't have any reason to knock Vancouver any lower.
Canucks fans, we don't hate you, okay? You are in cream of the crop. That is exactly where you want to be. If they're a cup winner, that's where you want to be. Poc, you are up with your favorite team, the Montreal Canadiens. I feel like this is a spicy year for Montreal.
Very.
What's that old Indianapolis Colts coach's name? Jim Mora?
Jim Mora.
And he goes, playoffs?
That's why I named
Playoffs?
it. Yeah.
Is this the
Wow!
No way.
We're getting spicy.
No way.
I don't think they're good enough quite yet to be in that category. But at some point, you expect this big jump to happen. And I know, like, the big nail in the coffin to me is what happened to Patrick Laine. And I feel like if he misses the entire season, then it's just like one step forward, 2 steps back. I'll push back. You were talking about Anaheim's prospect pool. I think Montreal has probably the best group of young, exciting players in the NHL. There are still some question marks at certain pieces. But you have to be excited going into this year as a Montreal Canadiens fan, and you think that they're going to continue to get better. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year, so I'm going to put them in maybe next year.
I like the Habs. And also, how do you feel about Montembeau?
Okay. Samuel Montembeau.
Montembeau.
Is his actual name.
My mom is from Montreal. I'm pathetic.
Montembeau.
And I think he's a pretty solid goalie. Is he the long-term starter? I grew up watching Carey Price, and I feel like having the expectation that they're going to have this Vezina winner every single year is just unrealistic because not every team has that. But I think he's proven he's capable of handling like a decent workload.
Jacob Fowler.
Yeah, that's the main guy that everyone's kind of wishing for, but you know how long goalies take. Like, he could be another 3-4 years away.
Julia, another, we talked about Washington here. We're going Nashville next. This is another darling team of the offseason. They made the most noise this offseason by far.
Yes.
Is it going to translate to anything more than what they had last year, which was a first-round exit?
Let's see. Yeah, they had a weird year last year. The whole canceled U2 concert that led to an 8-game run. And
the Sphere's electric.
I think it was like 16-0-2 run that they went on. They did have an electrifying offseason. They brought in Marchessault, Brady Shea. They lost a lot of guys too, like Glass, McDonough. They had to trade Askarov, which I thought was kind of sad.
Sorry,
did something news
just
happen?
Some breaking news.
Oh no, David Reinbacher he had knee surgery out for 6 months for the Habs.
Oh, that's brutal.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Speaking of young future.
But Nashville is a lot of guys coming off career years. Forsberg's coming off a career year. Their top 6 looks great. It'll be interesting to see if they're able to get any depth scoring because their bottom 6, I don't know if you have it up in front of you right now, Luca, but their bottom 6
leaves a little to be desired. It's very rough and tough of those teams. It just reminds you of teams of like, I don't know, the early 2000s where you're tossing them out to play the body, and if they chip in a couple goals here and there, then you're happy.
I like Evangelista.
I do too.
First-round pick Michael McCarron, actually.
Yeah, he'll grow into it. But, like, there's
McCarron
room.
was good. Actually, good
He
last
was
year.
good last year,
Was
which is
solid,
crazy.
Yeah.
And I think like Evangelista probably finds his way up the lineup eventually.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I love their back end. Like, I'm so excited to see that top pairing of Shea and Yossi. It's going to be great. I love that third pairing too. Let's go playoffs for now.
All right, I'm good
I
to
like
leave them there. Yeah, we haven't argued about any of our spots yet through through 7 teams, we've been pretty diplomatic on this.
Yeah.
I think
I would have pushed back hard if Nashville was in cream of the crop.
I would have too.
I'm very anti-free agency.
I mean,
in
as
sports.
Corwin, the last joke I feel like he left us was the Predators and Life Alert, and their age is up there. They don't have a lot of youth in this lineup, so
none.
The cliff
for
could
Evangelista
come
and
for
Karen.
these guys at any point. Like it's not unreasonable to say that. It's not the expectation, I would say, that the cliff is just going to come for Stamkos or Marchessault or O'Reilly, but it could happen. I'm up with the Dallas Stars. This is the team that we had cup winner last year when we did this, and they came close. They were in the Western Conference Final against the Oilers. I think they pushed them pretty far. I hesitate to put them back in cup winner just at the moment. Like, I can make the argument for it, and every argument for it is they're cream of the crop for sure.
Yeah.
They have one of the best forward groups in the NHL. I think we can all agree on that. The Johnston, Hintz, Robertson line didn't play a ton last year, but that's the line they're starting with this year, and they were dynamite in the limited minutes they played together. One of the best lines in expected goals last year. So that line's amazing. Logan Stankoven is playing full-time. Maverick Bourque led the AHL in scoring last year. He's playing with them full-time on a
What a
line right
team,
now
man.
with Jamie Benn, and that's their third line. Like,
Sick.
this top 9 is filled with scorers that are only going to get better. And like we talked about Wyatt Johnston, I think he's going to be amazing. The questions kind of are on defense, though, because they've done this thing where they've split Harley and Heiskanen, and that was one of the best pairs, arguably the best pair in the NHL last year. So right now, Heiskanen's playing with Matt Dumba and Harley with Lyubushkin, and that experiment is going to be interesting to see. There's no Tanev anymore, which I think was one of the best additions that any team made last year and really enhanced this Dallas defensive core. So that's kind of why I have them in cream of the crop.
I think cream of the crop is appropriate. I think for me, like they're a top 3 team.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
knocking on the door for
they're
sure.
knocking on the
this
door.
is their window.
If we're considering teams to go in that cup winner category, I think out of all the teams we've ranked so far, they're probably the first
For
one
sure.
Yeah.
that we would maybe consider. But this next team for you, Jesse, is one that we probably will consider as well. The Florida Panthers, looking to go back-to-back. Won the Stanley Cup. They're ready to go again. They're loaded up roster-wise. I don't know too many teams that win the cup and just look this good again and ready to repeat.
I'm actually not going to put them in cup winner. I'm going to put them in cream of the crop, creme de la creme, creme de la crop de la creme,
Cream corn.
crappie,
Cream cheese.
cream. You ever play Hot Shots Golf 3?
Yes.
No.
Cream cheese.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
Caddy would yell that all the time?
I
That's
do
amazing.
remember
Great
that.
game.
Great game. Hot Shots
yeah.
Golf, one of the best games.
One of the best. Barkov's amazing. Kachuk's amazing. The Panthers are amazing. We respect the Panthers. I don't want that to get lost anywhere because people can sometimes anyways. What I do think is that it is really hard to go back to the Stanley Cup 3 times and win. And I think that there's another team that I would actually stick in cup winner. So I'm going to stick Florida in cream of the crop. Are there any oppositions?
Well, I'm
to that?
curious to hear who this other team is, and I know we'll get to them, but in my opinion, I get the whole idea of it just being hard to get back there, especially for a 3rd time in a row.
Yeah.
But to me,
an older
out of
team, too.
respect, because of how they kind of retooled and are heading back into the season still looking so strong, I would still have them as, on paper, the best team in the NHL.
Retooled. They also did lose some
They
guys,
did lose
no?
some guys. They did. But the main core is still intact. And to me, if I'm just looking at fear factor of which team do I not want to play?
Cream of the crop is getting a little crowded right now. We have 5 teams in there already, so we may have to do some shuffling because there are a lot of good teams
Sheldon
coming up.
Keefe.
Sheldon
Get
Keefe.
ready to go to the cottage, buddy.
Yeah, that might be an obvious.
He
move
definitely
there.
wasn't at the cottage. He was definitely at some mansion on Lakeshore Drive in Oakville in that picture.
It did
Sheldon
look nice,
Keefe,
though.
get ready to learn Muskoka, Ontario. That's what I'll say.
Well, buddy.
He's got to learn the New Jersey laws first, though. He didn't know about that. What was it, the parking law?
Yes,
or
I
No,
did
whatever?
see
the
that.
gas pumping.
Gas
That's
pumping,
so
yeah.
wild to me.
That's
Pump your own
weird.
gas, you freaks. Get out of the car.
You are up with the Chicago Blackhawks.
Oh.
Oh, man. All right. This is, I feel like it's been an interesting, really rebuild around Connor Bedard so far. They've handed out a lot of contracts to a lot of veterans that I just look at this team and be like, 5 years from now, when you're trying to win a cup with this guy's just not going to be in your plans and he's not going to be on the team.
Well, Mitch Marner will be with him maybe next year.
Yeah, you're
Sometimes
really
it's-
trying to
You're
drive that
convinced.
home. Yeah,
You are
you are very
convinced.
I want
convinced.
everyone to go to Chicago.
Nylander, Marner.
Actually, though, Kirill the Thrill. there are reports that Kirill the Thrill is interested
Wants
in
to
going
play
to
in
Chicago.
Chicago.
I would love to play in Chicago.
That would be
It's a beautiful
disgusting.
city.
It is.
Can you imagine him with Bedard?
All right. Well, I'm trying to imagine some town with Bedard because when I look at this roster, I'm just not seeing enough right now. And I think if you're a Blackhawks fan, the whole purpose of the season is just seeing how good Bedard can really be and watch the develop. And there are some other young, fun players around him. But to me, a lot of their talent is still yet to come. So
They got Nazer coming through.
they do.
The
Frank
lineup as
Nazer
well,
should be
which I
good. Like Kevin Korchinski, another year of him. Like he should be better this year. They have some pieces, but I don't think they have like a loaded core like we were talking about with Anaheim and Montreal. To me, they're not very good, and I think they'll be picking in the top 3-4 again this year in the draft. Like, do I want to put them in first overall? I don't think they're the worst team in the West, but
It just depends on Bedard's development, and also if Bedard can stay healthy, which like hopefully he can.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put them in
But
maybe
That's
next
small
year.
guy.
But I think it's more of like maybe 2 years from now.
I'm changing that category. I'm going to put maybe next year or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Because
I want to move the Habs out of there then, but I'm gonna.
okay,
put
then I'll just
Chicago
make
there.
it maybe next year or 2.
They're in an in-between, between that and last overall pick.
Yeah. I feel like Chicago just has more NHL players than the San Jose Sharks, which I think
They
is
do,
probably...
but does anyone else feel that they've just like handed out, like they're just like overpaying for players
Of
who are
course.
just
They
not?
got to hit the floor, man.
Yeah, it's just.
But I kind of like that top line of Turbo, Bedard, and Bertuzzi. A little sneaky.
kinda-
That could be a dangerous
I don't
line
know.
this
You
year,
want
man.
Bedard playing with some better players. than that.
Teravainen's pretty good, man.
Let's move on now. Chicago and maybe next year or 2. Let's move on to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Probably end up in the top half of this list, which will probably upset the person ranking them. Julia.
I guess. I'm just pissed at Tampa. Like, show some respect to your all-time leading scorer. Show some respect to your
I was like, why are
longtime
you pissed
captain.
at them?
I'm pissed at them. But in all seriousness, I'm interested to see if it changes the dynamic at all in Tampa Bay. Because similar to Boston, like, this is going to be a pretty big shift in the culture for Tampa not to have Steven Stamkos in that room. He's been there for a long time. He's kind of been an integral part of culture in Tampa Bay hockey. He's been a big part of growing that market. So we'll see how this works out for them offensively. They literally had the best power play in the league last year. And obviously a lot of that ran through Kucherov because he outscored the rest of his teammates by like 50 some odd points,
Yep.
I think.
He was very good.
But Stamkos also contributed a lot on that power play. I think he had like the second or third most points on the team last year, and a lot of them came on the power play. So we'll see if they can continue to thrive on the man advantage like that. It'll be interesting to see how Gensel and McDonough replace Sergachev and Stamkos. And we know what McDonough looks like on that team. It'll be nice to see him and Chernak get back together. We'll see, though. This is a team, to me, that is the cream of the crop in the league, I guess, until they're not, right?
Ooh, interesting.
It just feels weird to put them in playoffs, question mark, even though that's probably the right spot. Or are they literally in the void?
I don't think they're in the
I
void.
think the void could be coming soon, but
I think the void
as long,
could be
as, long
coming
as
soon, too.
Kucherov's there, there's nothing even close to a void. But like,
I sense that you want to put them in playoffs.
I think it's playoffs too. I don't think they're the cream of the crop. And also, I literally spent an hour to 2 hours sitting here, like beating the Andrei Vasilevsky drum
Yeah.
until it was dead. But I think he's gonna have a better year this year. He had a down year last year, but maybe he doesn't, and they need him to have a good year. So I think playoffs is honestly an appropriate choice for them, even though it feels a little bit blasphemous based on everything we see from this team.
They've lost a step clearly from
Yeah.
the teams that were just consistently making it to the cup. So it seems fair. I'm up next with the Avalanche. I always put them in cup winner because of my bias a little bit and also because they're really good. I'm going to put them in cream of the crop to start right now. I think just coming into the year, they've got a few injuries and things that make them a little uncertain, and I think that's all going to be figured out by the time the playoffs roll around and they're going to be full strength. But coming into the season without Lehkonen, Nichushkin, and Landeskog healthy, and what Val is dealing with in the suspension, that's 3 top 6 players right there. So I think they have depth, and I'm excited to see some youth inserted into this lineup. If Cal Ritchie makes the team and is asked, at least in the beginning, to play some meaningful minutes.
That was a nasty move.
Nasty goal, and he
Oh
said he
my
actually
goodness.
has like been working on that in practice, and like it impressed Bednar because he's like, I saw him do it in practice. I never thought I'd see it in a game. Like it was fully on purpose.
Cracking the squad this year.
I think he might have to just because of the injuries at
Yeah.
the start. Kovalenko was solid. I really like what they did on defense. They added like Shillington and Brandstrom and DeHaan, so I think the depth is a bit better defensively.
Shillington was a great ad.
This team is loaded. They're going to be right there again. They are a perennial playoff team as long as McKinnon
They're like the
and
Stars.
Makar and
They're like the
Rantanen.
Stars.
It truly is. They are one of the 5 best teams in hockey, and pick where they go in there. I don't really care, but cream of the crop until I see otherwise. Jesse, Winnipeg Jets.
Look,
Oh, the glasses are coming off.
The shades have come off.
the lights are shining bright. The Jets are a weird team to me because on paper, honestly, really not that strong of a team. The Jets were like the best defensive team in the league last year and had an average back end, which I think really got exposed badly in that series against Colorado. And it just showed that like this is not a Stanley Cup winning blue line. But like as much as I say that like the Jets are almost reaching a point of being in that void area where they're starting to bring up their young guys. We don't really know what we have in our younger players, and there are all these older guys. It's like a weird mix of old and young. At the same time, what do we notice about the Jets? They always perform better than they should. They just do. Like last year, they should not have been. They were first in the league at a point last
Yeah,
year.
they almost won the Central.
And they almost won the Central. And look, playoff hockey's a different story, and we got our asses kicked in the playoffs. I don't think it's a secret. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm going to stick them in the playoffs because, I don't know, maybe you guys will disagree, but I just think that at the end of the year, we're going to look back and say, oh yeah, the Jets are right there in the playoff push.
Yeah. I have no problems with it. I think they have too much talent to be in the void.
I think they'll be really solid this
They're
year.
Halibucks
teetering
and
on the
Vezina.
void in the next couple of years here, maybe.
Potentially,
But
for sure.
My thing is
Yeah.
it's hard for a team like Winnipeg to enter that sort of organizational state just with how the team is. And
I don't know. We said that about Florida for the longest
It's hard
time.
for
We
them
said
to
that
sort of
about-
start from the ground up. That's why I just think there's a lot of pressure to consistently be good, and these players are continuing to deliver.
I feel like playoffs is appropriate. I don't feel comfortable putting them any lower.
Okay.
I agree. I think that's a solid ranking. We really haven't had a lot of arguments so far, so we're doing
Yeah.
a great job at
Yeah.
it.
We're all getting along.
Speaking of the void,
Poc, you're up with the wow. Oh, okay. Maybe we have a
Is it
disagreement.
the team I'm thinking of?
Who's the team you're thinking
Well,
of?
I want to rename the void category to just be called the Pittsburgh Penguins.
That's the team.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's
okay,
other
so
teams there.
am I just
There
put-
are
Yeah.
other
There's other
teams there
teams
for sure,
there.
but
Am I
these
just
guys,
putting them right in the void?
these guys are the
Get straight to
poster
the void
boys.
right now.
Wow,
Of
interesting.
I've got
not
some-
even their run last year to make it
So
make
that's what
some
I'm talking
noise. Like you don't believe that to be them this year?
When we did our free agent live stream, we were so brutally harsh on the Pittsburgh Penguins.
We
just with the decisions that they made. Not free agency live stream, the deadline.
Yeah,
deadline.
Yeah.
we
And
were
then
ripping.
after that, they went on like a nice little run. But to me, when I just look at this team, it's just all about like how much can Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, and I guess you could throw Chris Letang and Erik Karlsson in that sort of category, but how much can they carry on their shoulders? And I just think that the load that they're being asked to carry just far outweighs what at this stage in their career, and there's still some phenomenal players, but just what they're capable of doing. So do I think that they'll push for a playoff spot and that they'll be in a wild card race? Probably, just because of the top end talent that they have. But when I look at the rest of their roster, I just find it very difficult to be truly excited.
with Crosby playing some of his best hockey still, the Penguins still couldn't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like they still couldn't do it.
And they also have the oldest roster in the NBA.
They
Projected
haven't
to be
won.
the oldest
They have
roster.
not won a playoff series since 2018. Kyle Dubas was supposed to come in and make this team better, and they got worse last year. They lost Gensel.
All right, next up, another team that they're kind of interesting. They're in an interesting spot here. The LA Kings have been a playoff team the past few years. Julia, where are you putting the LA Kings?
Yes, and they've lost to the Edmonton Oilers each year.
I know, I feel so bad.
So demoralizing
Yeah,
when you
it's
just
tough.
know you're going to get Edmonton. And speaking of demoralizing, I guess we can't talk about this poor LA Kings team, which without talking about our buddy Drew Doughty.
Oh, I know.
Oh,
so
made me so
tough.
sick to see.
Such a tough loss.
Yeah.
Month to month, fractured ankle.
Hate to see that in a preseason game. So, Drew
Tough.
Doughty, thinking of you. And another tragic thing for the LA Kings last year was obviously the Pierre-Luc Dubois disaster that just didn't work out at
Yep.
all for them. Blake was able to get him off the books for Kemper. Be really interesting to see how Kemper is behind a little bit of a better defensive team than he was last year. They need him to be good, though. Well, this is another team that needs internal improvement. Quentin Byfield had a breakout season last year. They're moving him to center this year. It'll be cool to see him play at his natural position again. I used to love to watch him crash in front of the net in Sudbury in the OHL. Kaliev is a guy that doesn't come up as much as I thought he would as a prospect, because when I watched him in the OHL, he was electrifying, like could take a one-timer and put it anywhere from anywhere. So him taking another step would be really good, but I'm going playoffs ? For them. I think that is a very comfortable position. And I'm like Rob Blake, 8 years in the GM chair for him, so I think we keep an eye on that.
I think
this
he's
year.
toast after this year.
Yeah.
I feel like they've had so many prospects for so long, and some of them have panned out. Some of them, like you mentioned, like Arthur Kaliev, like
Where is
in
he?
the OHL, he's just scored so many goals. Yeah, Alex
They need
Turcotte.
Turcotte to,
Like,
they
they
need
just-
Turcotte to take a step.
I feel like 3 years ago we talked about them how we just talked about Anaheim.
They're just like a good, not great team to me.
Yeah.
Like, they'll be battling for a playoff spot. Might get in, play Edmonton again.
I'm sure they'll get
Sooner.
in and play Edmonton and
Edmonton,
lose
Edmonton,
Edmonton in the first round. So they are
Just
the
a-
definition of playoffs ?
They're in a playoff void.
Yeah, it kind of does feel like
actually
that.
They're almost like playoffs, but they're not getting that much better.
It's
Yeah.
like Edmonton's warm-up round. It's there.
I'm up with the Detroit Red Wings now. My second team, as Z likes to tease me about. And Z's not here. He's feeling under the weather. I guess we didn't address that from
Oh,
the
yeah.
start. He'll be back for whatever the next video we do in here is. The Detroit Red Wings. This, to me, is the most the void / playoff team ever. Because I look at them, and I don't think they have anywhere near the talent that a team like the Pittsburgh Penguins has. Maybe outside of Lucas Raymond, and like Larkin, Raymond, DeBrincat, great, but I can stack them up with like Crosby, Malkin, and then you've got Letang and Carlson on the back end. Pittsburgh's goaltending is much better than Detroit's. You're hoping that Seider and Edvinsson really take some steps forward and anchor that blue line, and I think Edvinsson came in last year and actually looked really, really good for this team. Seider, I don't think has been as good as he was when he broke out and won the Calder, so him getting back to that play will obviously be huge for this team, but they lost between Robbie Fabry, David Perron, Daniel Sprong, Gostis Barron-Wallman, 75 goals, 199 points. And all they did to replace that was bring in Vlad Tarasenko. And now they're also relying on 37-year-old Cam Talbot to be the goalie. You guys can fight me on it. I'm putting them in the void though, because I'm just not into this plan that and direction and vision that Stevie Y has for this team right now.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's fallen off the rails in the last like 2 years.
It really has.
How many years in are we now, and we're still like waiting to see something? And at this point, it just feels like it might even get worse before it gets better. Because look at the start that they had last season. They were so good, and they still didn't
missed
make the
Yeah.
playoffs.
Detroit's in a weird spot. The San Jose Sharks are not in a weird spot.
This team has such a bright future. Like, they've done a really, really good job accumulating assets, drafting. They made some like whatever moves in free agency. Like, they got some older guys and, you know, get Celebrini some talent around you. They're just not there yet. I really like Askarov, getting him.
I love a crazy goalie.
Yeah.
Like, he's just got a little tweak in him, and I think that goalies need that.
They
Have
take
you seen that
advantage.
video from Saginaw when he throws his stick into the, like,
and
so
when,
good.
when he does the push-ups as
Yeah,
well.
the bench
So
press.
good.
It's amazing.
So electric. So there's another team I think that I don't know. They're like still competing, in my opinion. They're in first pick territory.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
no
for sure.
question. And we could stick them there for now. They're probably in like a handful of teams at the bottom of the league, but the future's not, not maybe next year or the year after, but in 4 years from now, they're kind of like they actually have better prospects than Chicago. I think the future's really bright for them. Also love Will Smith. He's an absolute beauty. He's gonna light the lamp in a few years, and I like the future of this team. I do.
Nothing wrong with being first overall pick favorites when you've got the first
When the
overall
future's
pick from
right.
last year.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, add another number one pick to Celebrini and Smith and Askarov. You'll be okay. Ottawa Senators, Poc. Team we spent media day with. The team.
So
I
interesting.
feel like they're in the Sabres category.
Detroit of the North. That's what I'm calling
Yeah,
them too.
like we want more from them for sure.
I'm actually feeling good about the Senators going into next year. I think because we always compare them with the Red Wings and the Sabres, the teams that were waiting to take a step in the Atlantic. And I actually think that they have more talent than both of those teams. And yeah, it's a little disappointing because they botched the whole Tarasenko situation. They botched the whole Jacob Chikrin situation. But they finally have their goalie in Linus Ullmark, who, by the way, is just one of the best dudes I think we've ever met. Like,
Oh, yeah?
he was awesome.
And again, what he did for Simon.
Yeah.
The special of his athlete. Like,
super great guy.
He's the best guy ever.
So you feel like they've improved on their weaknesses from a year ago. You also bring in Travis Green as your head coach, who I think is kind of like that culture builder guy who can add another interesting dynamic. And they also have a nice mix of young players who are still ascending and also some veterans who are trying to win now in their career, guys like Claude Giroux. So I'm kind of excited for this Ottawa Senators team, and I'm willing to give them one more chance. And I feel like if it's not this year, then you're going right back down to the void, and it's just like you're this middling, mediocre team that's never going to take the jump. I'm going to throw them in playoffs. I feel like there has to be one team in the Atlantic that maybe falters a little bit, and I think with bringing in Linus Ullmark, addressing your goaltending, maybe Tim Stützle, he had a bit of a down year last year. I think he's going to score a lot more goals this year. Josh Norris, I hope this guy can stay healthy because he's such a great player when he's on the ice. I'm gonna say that they're a playoff team this year. I'm actually
Nick Cousins, that filthy little rat.
Yeah, be good to see him.
Little rat.
I'm interested to see how Ullmark is in Ottawa because Korpisalo had a good year the year before he went to Ottawa too. There's been a lot of goalies caved in by how poor Ottawa is defensively. So and Ullmark isn't. He's such a great guy, and we've seen him as a Vezina winner. Like, Ullmark is great, but it'd be really interesting to see him behind a team that is way worse defensively than Boston.
We've got 15 teams left.
Oh my gosh.
Julia,
what
you
are we
are
on?
up with the Toronto Maple Leafs, one of the more interesting teams in the league going into
The Toronto
this
Maple
season.
Leafs, my favorite team.
Your favorite team?
Sometimes. I've disassociated a bit. Another Game 7 loss in OT to the Boston Bruins will do that to you. The core is running it back this year. Like, some changes. They obviously got to add someone really exciting in Brandon Tanev on the back end. Not
Chris
Brandon. Chris, sorry. Ekman Larsson's an exciting add, too. I like the Pacioretty PTO. I like the Lorenz PTO, too. I'm excited to see that turn into deals. Like, they don't look that different up front. They've only lost Gregor and Bertuzzi, so not much changes up front, except for the fact that William Nylander, they're going to try him out at center again. Johnny T is going to slide down the lineup. And then between the pipes, they look a little bit different too. Be really interesting to see. I like the little bit of competition happening between the crease for the Leafs. They've got a ton of depth at left wing too right now.
All these things on paper are awesome in terms of the roster, but I think, we've talked so much about culture. And, who knows? Some people means that it doesn't matter at all, but, naming Matthews the captain and bringing Berube in is that's a lot of change.
That's a shift.
I think in a good way
Yeah.
for the Leafs. They clearly just needed something to happen, and I feel like that cannot be understated how important those moves will be for the upcoming year.
I'm stoked about that top D pairing too. With
This team
Tanev
does
and
look
Riley.
different, but different in a good way to keep them there, or different in a way where they're going down to playoffs for now. That's just
I don't think that you could say that their roster opening night is going to be worse than it was in Game 7 of the playoffs last year. So I think that they've got to stay in cream of the crop. I think it's going to be good, but it's so hard to gauge anything with this team because it's just no one cares until the postseason.
Are the Leafs that much better than the Lightning? Do we think?
They're just a little younger,
I think on paper they are, but their name is still the Toronto Maple Leafs.
You've nominated them from cream of the crop. Are you two both voting for playoffs?
Listen, they're a great regular season team, but if I'm a betting man, I'm going to bet on them losing in the first round again.
Yeah, but is that a result? And look,
They took
I'm a-
Game 7 overtime.
I don't
I'm a-
care.
I'm a-
You can
I'm a
change
screw-
things around a million times. The fact is, they have proven year after year after year after year that they're going to fall short of expectations.
Of
So
course.
once again, just based off, just like I said with Boston, they continue to exceed expectations. The Leafs continue to fall short of them. So I'm going to bet on them doing
Okay,
that.
but I'm a screw the Leafs guy more than anyone. But at the same time, look at the teams that are in their division. Where do we have them all in cream of the crop?
Okay, that's fair.
And I feel like in terms of talent, even if the Leafs are potentially going to blow it in the first round again, I feel like the talent alone, they should be in cream of the crop.
Let's slide these guys in cream of the crop for right now.
I'm fine with Leafs
They're
there.
just better than they were when they lost Game 7 to Boston. So
I just
it's
think
hard to-
talent-wise, they're very much aligned with a team like New Jersey. And New Jersey fell very short of expectations last year.
I
But
don't
again,
know.
the Toronto Maple Leafs are stinky, and I don't like them.
I'm up with the Edmonton Oilers. I'm going to make this quick. They are going in as the cup winner for me.
Yeah.
I think
that
that
was mine as well.
That was yours
mine
as well.
Yeah.
They made it there. They pushed Florida to 7, lost by a goal. This team was right there for the first time in this McDavid and Draisaitl era. Everyone's coming back, and I feel like the second line has improved drastically with Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson.
Yeah. Oh,
Van
yeah.
McCain, when he comes back, like, this team looks like they've got the depth to make some noise. Defensively, they made it to the Cup final with that unit last year.
Yeah.
I have to believe that Ty Emberson is going to give them more than Cody Ceci did.
Yeah.
Maybe it remains to be seen. But then, again, maybe Evan Bouchard takes another step forward from what we saw and is even better. So I'm just betting on McDavid, Draisaitl, this being the year that they figure out they know what it takes to get there. They came one goal short of winning the whole thing and could have definitely laid over after being down 3-0. So this is my Stanley Cup team. It sounds like we've got 3 votes for it. You're not sold.
I've also picked the Oilers to win the Cup. If we look at our last season preview, I picked the Oilers to win the Cup, and I've just kind of said I'm going to pick them every single year that they have McDavid. And I do agree with you that they've probably gotten better up front offensively, and they're just really, really going for it. One thing I will note, though, and I know Florida just did this. They lost in the Cup final, they went back the next year, and they won it. That is very rare. It is hard
It's rare to win back-to-back, though, as well.
Yeah.
It is, yes.
Minnesota Wild, Jesse, you're up next with the Minnesota Wild.
First of all, I just want to say Billy Guerin is guaranteed one of the best general managers in hockey, in my opinion. I think he's awesome. I think he was dealt a very, very tough hand. I think all the stuff with Parise and Suter has really capped him as to what he can and can't do. And Minnesota's not like the most desirable market. I think he's building the team in a nice way. They're almost at like a void section for me. Like, if they lose Kaprizov, like, they're in so much trouble. But they also have like these really good players on their roster. Like, they have Wallstedt in between the pipes, who's going to be just a stud in the future. They have Brock Faber, who's like already a number 1 defenseman. Like, he's probably the best defenseman on that team. And they have some talent up front. Like, I like Boldy, I like Kaprizov, I like Joel Eriksson Ek. I don't know, is it weird to say like maybe next year or 2 years? Like, it's so weird because they have all these good pieces already on their roster, but I don't really think they're good enough yet. But I think they could be really good in a couple of years. But they're better than these teams right now than like Anaheim, Montreal, and Chicago.
That's what I kind of feel like they're
weird.
in no man's land.
They are, but
Because
like
like
they
every
also have a
team
good
has
future, man.
some sort of collection of good products. Maybe they're a little bit stronger, but I just feel like
I feel like they're
expect them-
voiding a little bit, especially you mentioned those Kaprizov reports. Like, that's
If
so
Kaprizov-
Do you expect them to win a
bleak.
playoff series this year?
he
No.
leaves, but I can't dock them until he actually we have more on that.
Yeah.
You know? Like, right now he's a Minnesota Wild, and I like the prospects that they have in their system. No, I'm actually gonna say maybe it's more to me like maybe like 2 or 3 years.
I kind of like it.
Yep.
Because it, like you said, you mentioned a lot of good players that they have that you can build around, and they don't have a lot of burdening contracts, I don't think, that are going to tie them down. So, all right, Poc, you're up with the Vegas Golden Knights.
Vegas Golden Knights, everyone's favorite team to complain about.
The Golden Cowards.
And I feel like looking back at last year's trade deadline, we just thought this team was going to run through the entire NHL, getting Noah Hannafin, getting Tomas Hertl. But you know what? I think windows close very, very quickly.
Wow.
in the NHL.
Not in
And call
Vegas
me crazy,
usually.
but when I look at this team, I don't think that there is that much top-end talent, especially in the forward group. I'm going to put them in playoffs. I don't think that they're quite as good.
I thought you were going to say void for a
No,
second.
So
no,
did
I
I.
don't think they're quite in the void. They still have a lot of players in their prime, but
We're closing their window, but they're going to the playoffs.
no, playoffs just means like I expect them to be fighting for a wild card spot. Maybe they make it, but
Okay.
do I not think that they're any
Wow.
real threat at this moment? I'm gonna say no. They got absolutely gutted in free agency. They lost a ton of impactful players.
But they also acquired some great players at the deadline last year who are still playing for them. Like, man, are we just going to gloss over how good Noah Hanifin is and was pretty good for them last year? Also, they have Thomas Hertl. Like, look at their centers, man. Eichel, Carlson, and Hertl. Like, that's absolutely... That's dynamite, man. Not to mention they have Stone as well. I could also see a guy like Olofsson just, like, finding his game again.
That's another thing, though. To me, in the forward group, there's a lot of like, oh, hopefully this guy can find his game now that he's playing with better players. And I think that's a hard thing to bank on when you're competing with the Avalanche, the Oilers, the Stars. Like, I just don't think that they're on that level right now. And you lose Chandler Stevenson, Jonathan Marchessault, Alec Martinez. Like, those are 3 players that have been so big for you over the past couple of years where they've been perennial playoff contenders.
All right, we'll leave Vegas for now in playoffs and maybe reassess later. Philadelphia Flyers, Jules. Where are we putting Philly?
I don't know. They really outperformed what they looked like last year. I'm very interested to see what happens with the team and Torts. I don't know. It felt like Torts is a guy whose message can get a little much after a sustained amount of time. I'm a big Torts fan. Interested to see what happens there. They have Matvei Michkov. I wonder where he's going to play. And I hope they're good between the pipes.
I feel like we got to address the Michkov a little more. He's a franchise-altering player potentially.
Potentially.
Yeah.
We'll see where he goes. Is he going to play on the first line with Couturier and Konechny? Is he going to play with Tippett and Fraud? I'm very interested to see where he goes, but I don't know if he's going to change the fate for this team. They had the worst power play.
Maybe not this year.
Yeah. They had the worst power play in the league last year.
And who better guy to fix that?
Yeah. Hopefully that gets better with Michkov. I hope they're okay between the pipes. They have Fedotov from the KHL. That's kind of exciting for them. But combined with Ursin and Fedotov between the pipes, I think they've got less than 70 games of NHL experience. I think maybe next year feels okay. They have some direction in this franchise.
I think Michkov enough is to be
yeah.
Okay. It's almost like a Bedard-esque type prospect where you're this is such a centerpiece to build around, and you can't help but be excited if you're a Flyers fan. Also, just want to give a shout out to Torts on the topic of Torts.
Yeah.
For inviting Guy Gaudreau to Flyers practice. People are very critical of the way that Torts can coach sometimes. It's not for everyone. But one thing I think that really stands out about him is that he is just evidently a good person. And he proves this. He always doing things to prove that year after year. He has a love for animals and dogs, and he just seems like a really good guy. So,
I heard something funny about Michkov. I heard he showed up to camp with he showed up to Philly with not one piece of gear. He was like, dress me.
Amazing. Well,
let's see it.
Move.
And there was that report that apparently when Michkov did the Michigan, which we posted, apparently Torts looked up at all the Flyers staff and they just cracked a smile at him.
The New York Islanders. I'm up with my favorite team, Lou Lamoriello. Honestly, with Patrick Waugh in the fold, them making the playoffs last year, when he came in, he kind of turned this franchise around a little bit. We saw the Matt Barzal that we haven't seen since his rookie year. Brock Nelson is really good, consistent 30-goal scorer. The big question mark is Sorokin, honestly, where he got back surgery randomly. Yeah, say what you will. I know
Varlamov was
talking about. I'm talking about Sorokin. Varlamov was better.
Varlamov was pretty good last year.
for
He
impact.
was good. Okay, I'm not gonna lose it on Sorokin this year, but big question mark, obviously. If he can give them 10% better than what he was last year.
What was he last year?
He was the worst version of
Worst
himself.
goalie in the world.
Worst
according
goalie
to
in the
Luca.
world, according to... I mean, for a guy that was a Vezina candidate, yeah, probably. The fall-off was incredible. I'm going to put them in playoffs. This is a team I normally would maybe put in the void, but given Sorokin's potential, Dobson's presence and development as a number one defenseman and maybe one of the best offensive defensemen in the league, Pelech and Pollock, full seasons of them. They only played 58 games last year. And how they looked in the playoffs, I think Patty Waugh is going to have this team right back in that discussion. Columbus Blue Jackets, Jesse.
So, obviously, the Jackets enter the season in a very unique and unfortunate circumstances, and it goes without saying how hard this team will be playing for both Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau, and everyone is clearly going to be cheering for them. I mean, obviously you want to see them do well, but there have been more important things that have happened within that organization, and I think just the fact that the players are going to be able to show up every day to the rink, whether it's practice or games, and just play for the brothers is like a beautiful thing in itself, and they should be commended for that. So, and I know we've done it before, but just again want to extend our deepest condolences to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Obviously in our thoughts and hoping for nothing but the best from you guys.
Do we give them their own tier? Like, it feels really strange, I think, to talk about them as a hockey team in a franchise. Like, we can, and I'll give you the floor to talk about what they have as a franchise, and like we can talk about like the actual hockey and the on ice product, but it does feel weird given everything that's happened. And like you said, no other team in the NHL is going to be playing with the indescribable weight of the tragedy that's happened on their shoulders. I feel it's appropriate, and you guys can disagree or agree with me. Maybe we just give them their own tier, and this is kind of your floor to talk about some exciting prospects that they have, players to look out for, why you should be optimistic as a Columbus Blue Jackets fan as it pertains to all things on the ice.
Personally, I'm also behind the Jets. Like, the Jackets for years now have been my team, and always cheering for them. I think there is a lot of exciting prospects. I think they kind of fall into that category of maybe in the next couple of years because they have guys like Juricic, they have guys like Adam Fantilli, who's going to take a massive step forward. I really like Caden Lindstrom, the player that they drafted. He seems he's going to be awesome. I met him, and he was a super cool guy. So yeah, I'm always going to be supporting this team. And I do like the pieces that they have. Like, I really like Zach Werenski as well. He's awesome. And, yeah, I mean, they're just one of those teams that I think everyone collectively is going to be cheering for this year. And just looking forward to seeing, just looking forward to cheering for them, really, this year.
Yeah. And I know when Sean Monahan scores his first goal as a Columbus Blue Jacket, like, that's going to be such a emotional moment, yeah. And the first time they take the ice for their first regular season game in Columbus, and there are a lot of emotions tied to their season given everything that's happened, and we wish all the best. Obviously, like you said, condolences still to the Gaudreaus and their family for everything that's going on, but also our thoughts are with this team and these players, because hockey, if we've learned anything about the sport, it truly is such a tight-knit family, and they're all going through this together right now, and they've got a job to do, unfortunately, and there are no days off, like you said, to sometimes be able to deal with the things that come with this stuff.
And I know that they're keeping Johnny's jersey, they're hanging it in a stall for both home and away games, as if he would be playing. So I think that's really nice, and also want to send on top of the Columbus Blue Jackets family and, of course, the Gaudreau family, I want to also send condolences to the Calgary Flames, because Johnny was such a legend there, and really played is such a legend there. Yeah. And the Boston College family as well. So it's an indescribable loss, but keeping all of those organizations / schools in our thoughts.
For sure. Well said. Let's move on to the St. Louis Blues. We've got 7 teams left, and I think we can rip through some of these. So, St. Louis Blues.
I'm going to nominate them for the void. They're good, not great. There's some pieces I like, but then I also think that there's maybe a lot of pressure on some players who are maybe a little bit more unproven or just a little bit younger in their career to really carry a heavy load. The one thing I will say that was a positive, we don't see this very often, but the kind of heist they pulled on the Oilers, attacking them for some 2 RFAs, 2 players that I think can be really solid and have a lot of potential. Very, very high draft picks. I have a hard time seeing them battling with the top end of the West, but also they're much better and much more talented than your San Jose's and your Chicago's and even like a team like Anaheim at this point. So I'm gonna put them in the void.
Yeah, tough spot to be, I think, if you're the Blues, looking at their lineup and just outside of Jake Neighbors, maybe not a lot of guys with that kind of pedigree that you've drafted that you are going to see development from this season.
Maybe Zach Bolduc.
Zach Bolduc, exactly. Yeah. Julia, the New York Rangers.
Oh, they're anything but the void. The Rangers rock. They set a franchise career record in wins and points last year. It was a weird way that they lost to Florida. A couple overtime losses in a row, right? And then it wound up being 3 losses in a row. I think they led that series in one point. I'm really excited about the Riley Smith edition. I think it's been a long-standing thing that they haven't been able to find the right winger with Zibanejad and Kreider. And I think Riley Smith is a guy, a really smart player, a 200-foot player who could also contribute and distribute the puck offensively, be in front of the net. Like, I think he could be that guy. Like, if we're doing 2 teams in Stanley Cup favorites, one from the East and one from the West, I think this could be our representative from the East.
We haven't done that in the past. I think we usually just do the one cup winner.
I still feel more strongly about Edmonton. If we're doing one from each conference, I would take New York. But if that's the case, I'm going with creamed corn, cream of the crop corn.
No arguments here. Can of corn.
You know what, though, for me, like, there's a couple weird things about the Rangers. How much better can this team actually get without winning a cup? Yeah, I'm just
that's the thing. They can't, yeah.
It's like, but like, are we just going to see the same thing from them this year where they're just kind of going to fall just short? Are they going to be better this year? I don't know. I'm kind of just like, okay, like let's just finally get there. This Rangers team is too good to just continuously fall short of the Stanley Cup final.
I have the Seattle Kraken. We were just in Seattle. You mentioned it before. Electric place to watch a game if you haven't already been. This team is pretty strange. Made the playoffs a couple years ago. Last year missed out in a pretty big way, like 17 points back. They made some moves this offseason, mainly Chandler Stevenson and Brandon Montour. Right now, though, I'm going to put them in the void just because it's a collection of guys, and Matty Beniers had a really down year, and they're kind of between playoffs and the void for me because I believe in the new head coaching direction with Dan Bilesma in there. He was the coach in Coachella Valley, their farm team. So he's got a lot of familiarity with the organization and working with some of these younger guys. I think Beniers definitely has a bounce back year. But they have trouble scoring, and I don't know if bringing Chandler Stevenson in and relying on just a bounce back year from Matty Beniers is enough to close that gap. I think they also have questions in goal with Joey Decord and Grubauer. They both played well in stretches for this Seattle team, but neither one of them has also kind of taken that number one spot. And defensively as well, I like Vince Dunn. I think he's really good, but outside of him and Montour, a lot to be desired, I would say. And I don't know if the injection of youth comes in with Shane Wright and if he's even going to be given an opportunity to play meaningful minute.
I think with the new coach, he will be.
So I thought so too, but when you look at their center depth, it's Beniers, it's Stevenson, it's Yanni Gourde. Who is he playing over it? Like Jordan Eberle right now slated to start on the fourth line with him.
It just seems like
there's not a lot of room.
Pretty good
NHL players.
Great, exactly. Outside of Matty Beniers.
Yeah.
But how much better can Beniers be than he was in his rookie year playing with McCann and Bjorkstrand? This is an interesting one, the Buffalo Sabres. We've got 4 teams left.
It's just the same every year. And like I'm just like I still just don't know. I don't know. Like I guess we could put them in playoffs because like they theoretically should be competing. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, craziest name ever. They need him to have a big year. I think Owen Power is still going to take another step forward. He's a stud. He's unreal. I'm the most into him. They've got a great forward group. It's just like, am I really supposed to feel that differently about this year? And what teams are they getting over in the East right now? Like even in the division alone, Boston, Florida, and Toronto should all be the top 3 teams again.
Yeah.
In the Atlantic. Okay.
I'm kind of inclined to put them in 1 year away just because of how young still Benson and Quinn are and how much they might be relying on those two.
Yeah, it feels like now we're into like the next phase of
their rebuild
prospect pool that now they're relying on being good.
Exactly.
Whereas like the team that we've been waiting for the last 4 years, it just didn't happen.
And their other rebuild completely failed when they had like Reinhardt and Eichel. Like those guys are gone. They're succeeding with other teams. O'Reilly gone. Like they are rebuilding. And now we're in a stage where we're saying they're a year away again.
How is this different than Ottawa, though?
I just think Ottawa's more talent.
Ottawa also has like a guy.
Vets.
Well, they also got. I'm like Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen's awesome.
Allmark is the big difference. But
I think Allmark's like a pretty big difference. And I'm not saying that Ottawa's for sure a playoff team also. And I also like Ottawa's team on paper more than I like Buffalo's team right now, where they are right now. And I agree Ottawa's seems to be a little older, right? Or they've got more guys that are like ready to help win now. Maybe we'll put them in maybe the next year or two. But like Buffalo, pick your up. Like it's time.
Time to speed it up for us. We got 3 left. I've got 2 of them. I've got Utah and Calgary. I'll start with Utah. I'm excited to see them play in Utah. I feel like that always adds some energy and some unknown as well to not only like that franchise, but the teams that go into Utah. They don't know what to expect. Kind of gives them a weird home ice advantage like it did playing at Mullet, where Arizona had a randomly really good record there. I'm going to put them playoffs. I think that this is a team. And I'll preface it by saying
Jesse just had to physically close his own mouth.
No.
I'll preface it by saying
I respect it.
It's more of like I think they're going to be
thing.
fighting for the playoffs. I don't know necessarily if they make it in, but given the talent that they have up front, combined with the experience of some of those guys like the Gunthers of the world, like the Barrett Haydens of the world, and then them adding Sergachev, John Marino, some other guys on the back end, I think that solidifies that unit a little more than they have.
Too.
Connor Ingram's been great. Yeah. So that to me is why, though, I think they can fight for a playoff spot. I think they're really talented up front, and they're banking on a lot of development of some of these young guys. Clayton
Keller's one of the most
been
underrated players in the league.
Unbelievable. Logan Cooley had about as good of a rookie season as you could have wanted if you're Arizona. So there's a lot to be excited about for those first-year Utah fans. Calgary, I'm just going to do really quick. I think they're in the void. We've talked about them a lot as being a team that has a lot of these contracts, doesn't have a lot of youth in their lineup.
Definition of the void.
Literally,
kind of the void.
might be the most void team.
You're talking about the Penguins being the void.
They're in a worse.
They have so much money committed to the top. Like at least Pittsburgh, paying Crosby like $8.7 million, paying Malkin $6 million, like all these guys, but they're even better than Calgary's top end town, and Calgary's top end town is getting paid way more. And like, you want to be paying Kadri and Huberdeau a combined $19.5 million a year for the next how many years? Oh my goodness! The Calgary Flames are in trouble.
Could be a sneaky first pick favorite if things don't
really
go well.
Yeah.
And like,
I think the hope is like if Huberdeau picks it up and then you get value and could trade him.
They have too many like solid NHL players, I think, for it to get that bad of them being maybe in the first overall pick conversation. But I echo all of your sentiments where it's like Craig Conroy's had to sell off pieces of this team. We talk about Tanev, we talk about Mangiapane, and to think of how many players that have been traded out of Calgary over the past 3 years, it's come a long way from us thinking they might have been winners in that Huberdeau-Kachuk trade to where it's at. And no one could have predicted that, which is why I feel horrible for their fans in this sense, where like we all thought pretty highly of that move for them getting an 100-point guy. No,
And
exactly.
no
They did the best they could have in that situation, and this is the other side of the coin. If you're a Calgary fan, you're hoping you end up in maybe next year or two next year rather than staying in the void.
Oh, Calgary's in a yucky situation.
It's a tough spot. Let's end with Carolina.
Yep.
Last one. I think we're all going to be in agreement where they end.
I think you have to put them in cream of the crop just because of the consistency that they've shown. But they're also, I feel like
they got worse.
Yeah, I feel like they got worse, and maybe I felt better about them, maybe being like more of a cup contender in the past years as I do now. I just think some of the players that they lost, Brady Shea, Brett Fish, Teravainen.
Fish? Is that his nickname?
Brett Pesci.
That's how you say fish in Italian.
Yeah.
To me, when you're relying on like Jesperi Kotkaniemi to like play in your top six, it just feels like. And also, the biggest question mark I have is goaltending, and I think there's a lot of pressure this year on Kuchetkov, just because Freddie Anderson, he's been good, but he hasn't always been able to stay healthy. I just feel like maybe we're starting to see the window, like it's not closed, but it's shrinking in Carolina. But they're still
back end
so
is still
consistent, and they still have so many good players that they got to be in cream of the crop.
That system is just proven over the years that Rod is running a great ship. He knows what he's doing. They'll be top three in that division most likely and get it done. This is our tier list. Cup winners, Oilers, cream of the crop. 9 teams in there, 9 teams in the playoffs. It makes sense. I think that's actually kind of fair the way the math works. Yeah. The Void, the Penguins, the Red Wings, the Blues, the Kraken, the Flames. We've got Columbus in their own category there. But Jesse, as you kind of alluded to, they probably more fit into maybe next year or two with the Ducks, the Habs, the Blackhawks, the Wild, the Flyers, the Sabres, and then first pick faves, the San Jose Sharks. Very quickly, one team that you want to nominate in one category down to another. For me, I think it might be the Bruins going into playoffs rather than elite.
That was like one of the first things we did too, and I did mention like I kind of want to see
how it turns
out.
Up. I kind of they have passed though. I don't feel. You know what? I kind of feel we've done a pretty good job with this, but I don't have any glaring ones. I could be persuaded to maybe move the Bruins or Devils down one spot.
I still think it speaks to the parity of the league with how many teams we have in the crop.
Yeah. I know last year was fluky, and I know that they've got a better goaltending situation this year, hopefully. Because Markstrom hasn't been great the last.
Yeah, it's still a pretty big question. Like, I have no problems kind of dropping them down to playoffs, and I don't think it's a bad thing that we have some good teams in playoffs that have questions, like the Golden Knights, like the Lightning.
When you say Golden Knights, when you say Lightning, I feel like the Devils are more. At least right now, I could see them, tearing it up.
For sure, I could see them winning the East. I could also see what happened last year with the goaltending issues being a thing. So, all right, this has been the 2024-25 season tier list. One of our favorite activities, I think, to do, and we love seeing your comments about what teams we got completely wrong even before the season starts and what teams we got completely right. So let us know what you like, what you didn't like in the comments, and let us know who your cup winners are, because we love being able to kind of read those and look at who you guys think is going to win the Stanley Cup. It's going to be an exciting year.
Come on, Buffalo. I'm rooting for you.